Hi, I'm Tracy Koga with something short and fun. This is a Hugh soundbite. Well, we want to introduce you to a new dining experience, something that will take you back into time, right, Steve?
Well, that's the hope, is to celebrate the past a little bit, right, and bring old style, ancient food styles to the modern. So that's what we want to do. Yeah.
So we want to introduce everybody to Ishkode, and I have the chef here himself, Steve Watson. And Steve, let's just say your menu is a little bit different than regularly going to a restaurant and serving up the steaks and potatoes.
Yeah. No, we're trying to again celebrate that culture, the Métis, the partnerships that developed among Indigenous and Europeans. So, so a lot of basically. Almost all ingredients are things found here. A few that were brought over by Europeans, things like pork and some dairy. So we can celebrate that a little bit while also using local whitefish and wild rice and berries and that kind of thing. So a bit of the food itself is also quite Métis in that sense, that what they brought over and what we already had here, mingling and then modernized. So it's a little bit more refined.
Well, we are right in the biggest winter festival in Canada, Festival du Voyageur, hence the Métis flavor. But it's really a celebration of Indigenous foods all around.
Yeah, and so a lot of we try as much as we can to get things that are Indigenous, even the food Indigenous to Manitoba. Some things, again, we want to celebrate the Métis as well. So things they brought over, but whitefish and berries and bison is on some menus, and we got some elk and that kind of thing. So as Indigenous as we can, while also celebrating the partnerships as well. So.
And now it's also true the chefs themselves are Indigenous, and you bring your own culture to this food that you're going to be cooking tonight.
Yeah, no, it's it's one of those fields where there's not really a lot of Indigenous representation especially in management in food, the food world, whether it's managers or front of house in the restaurants or chefs or sous chefs and that kind of thing. So it's Indigenous people are underrepresented there, and in many fields as well. But this is one, and so we're trying to get more excitement in there. And hopefully we at the school at Commonwealth College we train a lot of Indigenous students as well. So hopefully we can. Cheryl here is one. She's from Norway House, so we can do those things and hopefully help them out on the reserves as well as and maybe even here in bigger cities and get those management positions eventually.
Well, and that's so important. And it's not only the food tonight, but there's going to be entertainment, storytelling. So the people really get a good feel of not only of what they're eating, but why.
Yeah, no, we got there's a fiddler last night. There's some art. We got 2 art installations, one in the dining room and one just off to the dining room. There's a bit of a story that we tell as well in between courses. That's a fictional story, but based on true events and what would have happened, right? So, a lot of my Indigenous side anyway, the culture or my ancestry that I know of anyway, stops basically at my great-grandmother because we don't know what happened before her. It was just gone, right? So so this could be my story. I'm not too sure. I'm not exactly 100% sure. So we do that a little bit as well, and a little bit of the education as well of we do a pork course, and it's because they came over, they brought pigs, so that's one thing we can do. So a little bit of education, a little bit, nothing too crazy. It's mostly about the culture, the food, and the art as well. So.
And yourself as a chef, what are some of the challenges, and I guess what are some of the creative outlets now being immersed in this type of cuisine?
Well, one menu we do is we call it 1491. It's only ingredients found pre-colonization, and so 1491 and prior. That's really, really tricky because how do you develop that for the modern palate and things that you're missing things, processed sugar, processed salt, flours, that kind of stuff. Yeah, so that's quite the challenge. And just in logistics alone, cost is another one. The stuff to get elk and the bison and wild rice is ridiculous right now. So that's one of the challenges is that it's not really hugely in demand right now because I don't think a lot of people know. So the cost, if there's not much of it, cost goes up, right? So that's part of it. But and then this one with the Métis is to again modernize it, bring it while also celebrating it. So you're kind of not necessarily tied to a certain style, but you want to celebrate one story, one part of history in the food as well. So you can't just do whatever you want. You need to use a certain base of say about a dozen ingredients, celebrate those, right? And how do you do that? So that's the challenge, but it's also a lot of fun to be able to take something and pork came over. So what can we do with that, right? And so we can tie those things in and hopefully have a bit of fun with it as well. So.
Well, I'm really, really fascinated about this all. Why did you decide to do this, Steve?
I went to, I was fascinated by food and cooking from a young age. High school or so is when I really got into it. But my training and focus was more European style, French, that kind of thing. But a few years ago, my grandmother died, and realizing her culture was very Western, very Ukrainian. She was born in Peguis, Peguis First Nation, and then residential school system. So she became very Ukrainian. So a lot of pierogies and cabbage rolls and that kind of thing. And my life was seemed normal. Like I grew up in Garden City, so with a lot of Jewish friends and Ukrainian friends and Polish friends. So it was just part of my background. I didn't realize, and then realizing later on how bad things are on reserves and why that is, and where my culture, why it changed so much, right? Because there's no Ukrainian in there whatsoever in terms of bloodline. But so what happened there? And I looked into it and wanted to get more into it. And so that kind of where it came from is that something needs to be done. The food culture was taken, right? It was stopped. So what can I do? I'm not, I am related to Maurice Sinclair, but he's a little bit higher than I am in the world of importance. But I know food. I'm not a judge. I'm not a lawyer or senator like he is, right? So I can do food. So what can I do in the food? And we can maybe hopefully give back a little bit and try to educate people on it, and also bring it to the mainstream. Not just, we don't want it to be, oh, it's good for what that is, but it's just good. And it's also Indigenous. Not, well, that's pretty good for Indigenous food. No, we don't want that. We want it to be really, really good. We want people to want it, just like they want any other style of food, because it's good. Not because of the culture necessarily, but also just because it's good and maybe learn a thing or two about it. So.
And I think something like Ishkode could probably break the ice on that, for the younger generations coming up.
Yeah, hopefully we can get a few people in there, and whether it's people here that we're feeding are Indigenous themselves, or just people who want to help out, or even people who can move some things and do some things, and maybe help somebody at some point come from a reserve and get an education, where they go back to reserve and just even cook better, and instead of Cheetos and pizza pops all the time, right? So we can do there, and maybe there's more food security and sovereignty that we want to do as well. So it's a long process, but hopefully we can do something, right?
Wow,
Yeah.
I mean, kudos. You're a pretty amazing guy to be paving the way, really.
So.
Yeah.
Hopefully we can do something. Like I said, might go well beyond my lifespan, but something, right? We can do something, right? So that's what I want to do. Yeah.
Well, we're so thrilled to be here. Can't wait to see your dishes. What's the first course?
We got roasted whitefish with smoked duck fat, pea puree on a bannock cracker.
Okay,
Yeah.
and that's just the first one of
Yes.
7.
Yeah.
Well, you got a busy night.
I do.
Yeah, thanks so much, Steve.
Okay, thank you.
Ishkode.ca. I don't think we've heard the last of this. And for sure, maybe you'll become a senator one day, too.
We'll see. Yeah.